It was in June of 2020 that boxing legend, the Gypsy King himself, Tyson Fury, took to Twitter and excitedly announced that the big fight was on. Terms had been agreed for the contest boxing fans wanted more than any other: Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua. This was huge news for boxing fans, the two best heavyweights in the world fighting to be the undisputed world champion. Boxing loves hype, but it is almost impossible to overstate the significance of this contest. More important than the fight announcement was who Fury thanked for making the contest possible. Fury said, "I just got off the phone with Daniel Kinahan. He's just informed me that the biggest fight in British boxing history has just been agreed. Get in there, my boy. Big thank you to Dan for getting this deal over the line." Welcome back to Crime Chronicles. Stay tuned as we look at how cartel boss Daniel Kinahan used his money and power to take control of world boxing. In his excited social media post, Tyson Fury hadn't just given boxing fans the news they wanted to hear, he'd also given up one of boxing's darkest secrets. The man he thanked 3 times in his short video is one of Europe's top mobsters, leading the Kinahan cartel, which deals in drugs, guns, and murder. The announcement created a wave of expectations, but not for the big fight. Community groups that had seen firsthand the devastation wrought by the Kinahan cartel's drugs hoped that the police would finally have to deal with Daniel Kinahan. They couldn't stand by and let the biggest stars in boxing lord a gangster. Coaches from inner city gyms wanted to know why they should be trying to convince kids that boxing offered them a haven, protecting them from drugs, gangs, and from violence, when a man like Daniel Kinahan was at the top of the sport. The media started asking questions, working their way around the big names of the fight game, asking about how Kinahan was involved in the upper echelons of boxing. Everyone said the same thing. Daniel Kinahan was a disaster for the fight game, but no one would go on record saying this, realizing that speaking out might be hazardous to their health. Only a few short years before, Daniel Kinahan had been at the center of the darkest day in Irish boxing, the Regency Hotel shooting. Kinahan's boxing management company, MGM, was hosting a big tournament, the Clash of the Clans, on Saturday, February the 6th. The weigh-in was taking place at the Regency the day before. Suddenly, just as the last boxer to be weighed was leaving the stage, there was an explosion of noise. There was at least one gunshot which set off fear and panic. Minutes earlier, a middle-aged man wearing a distinctive flat cap had walked through the hotel, linked arm in arm with what appeared to be a female companion. Both were concealing guns. They were looking for Daniel Kinahan, with the aim of shooting him dead. 3 other gunmen arrived at the lobby of the hotel, and they were dressed in the uniform of the Irish Police Emergency Response Unit and carried what appeared to be Kalashnikov rifles. Some of those fleeing from the weigh-in ran straight into them. One of them, David Byrne, regarded as a top criminal associate of Daniel Kinahan's, was shot dead. The gunmen began roaming the hotel, hunting Kinahan. 2 more associates of Kinahan were shot and injured, but the target, Daniel Kinahan, escaped unharmed. Daniel Kinahan's interest in boxing goes back to his Dublin days. He's more than a fan of the sport, and in the early 2010s, he decided to open a gym in his new home city of the time, Marbella in Spain. Kinahan would go on to set up a boxing management company and gym with a new business partner, Birmingham boxer Matthew Macklin. It was called Macklin's Gym Marbella, or MGM. Nobody in the sport could have predicted how big and powerful MGM would become. For sure, well-known criminals used the gym, but MGM also became known as a serious professional base for boxers. Talented young British and Irish fighters began training at MGM. Among the recruits was Tom Stalker, the captain of the successful British 2012 Olympic boxing team. Some of the most powerful people in British boxing, including promoters Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren, visited the gym. MGM was quickly becoming a player in the boxing business, and despite its apparent attraction to well-known criminals, there didn't seem to be any outward signs of criminality. That would change quickly. First with the shooting of top boxing trainer Jamie Moore at Daniel Kinahan's Spanish home. Moore, who'd been working at the Marbella gym, survived, and it became obvious he wasn't the intended target, having been widely reported that the gunman had been hunting Daniel Kinahan himself. Secondly, another regular at the gym, reputed mobster Gerard Kavanagh, was shot. Gary Hutch, nephew of Irish gangster Jerry the Monk Hutch, and former right-hand man of Daniel Kinahan, would also be murdered. Word was out that he had organised the attempted hit on Daniel Kinahan, and his death would spark the deadly Hutch-Kinahan feud. You might have thought that this gun violence would have obliterated MGM's trajectory, but you would be wrong. Within months, MGM and Daniel Kinahan could boast 2 world champions, Liam Smith and Billy Joe Saunders, and that success would breed further success. This made Kinahan more determined than ever to make MGM the biggest boxing promotion gym in the world. The Regency weigh-in shooting would be the beginning of the end, and days later, the revenge killings would start in earnest. Taxi driver Eddie Hutch was shot dead, an execution thought to have been carried out by the Kinahan cartel. Irish police sources have said he was an innocent man, but he was the brother of Jerry Hutch, the man alleged to have organised the hotel hit. Within 2 years, there would be a total of 18 killings, and the Kinahan cartel would be responsible for most of them. As police started to apply pressure to the Kinahan organised crime group, news broke that Daniel Kinahan was officially standing down from MGM, with Matthew Macklin saying the move followed the bad publicity. At the same time, MGM would rebrand and become MTK Global. Just when you'd think Daniel Kinahan was stepping away from boxing, in steps Tyson Fury. Fury had been in a bad place. After winning the world heavyweight title in 2015, he spent most of the following year in a whirlwind of drugs, drinking and depression. He had to relinquish his titles, and his weight ballooned. But then, in 2017, he began a remarkable comeback at MTK in Marbella. Although Kinahan was no longer formally linked to MTK, Fury would sign with MTK with Daniel on board as an official advisor. The fact is that MTK and Kinahan were hurtling to the very top of boxing, helped in large part by the remarkable rejuvenation of Tyson Fury, who was winning over a new audience in America. MTK had become huge, with more than 200 boxers on its books. It was the biggest boxing management in Europe, maybe the world, and Daniel Kinahan was at the sharp end. Kinahan was hoping that his involvement in global boxing would legitimize him and rehabilitate his image, but he was wrong. Questions were being asked about him at Westminster and in the Irish Parliament, and it was announced he would no longer negotiate fights for Tyson Fury. Then, MTK said he was stepping away from boxing, but they continued to grow, and questions were asked about where their money was coming from. The final nail in the MTK global coffin would come in April of 2022, when the company would cease trading after the US government announced a $5 million reward for information leading to the arrest and/or conviction of Daniel Kinahan for participating in transnational organized crime, namely narcotics trafficking and money laundering. The honeymoon was over, and the world of boxing had finally rid itself of the insidious control of Daniel Kinahan. Over time, it would become clear that his involvement in boxing was nothing more than an excellent money laundering opportunity, and he used tried and tested organized crime strong-arm tactics to create fear amongst rivals. The boxing world is better off without Daniel Kinahan and his money made from misery. Thank you for joining us today on Crime Chronicles. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel with your friends.